Harvest Moon 2. This game is more technically impressive than the previous GBC game. There's foraging outside, and there's an actual town you walk around in. Both of those are only superficially good because time passes outside. When the game starts, you get the option to choose between a boy or a girl. I always heard about how this game has gameplay differences depending on which gender you chose, which feels like a cluelessly sexist gimmicky way of introducing replayability. Here, only the boy has access to turnip seeds. Good thing I picked the boy purely out of nostalgia for its similarity to the main character in Friends of Mineral Town, because otherwise, that is bad design. Gender differences in general are a god dang it in Harvest Moon. I only looked up gender differences because I remembered my first playthrough of Harvest Moon 3. Anyways, when you first start the game, you see a short cutscene where the mayor briefly considers turning the rundown farm into a theme park before you step in. Was the town just importing their food expensively and all the time its farm was run down? It's weird to think such a small town with only one farm could have survived having no one managing its farm for so long. There's no indication the seed shop is a farm by itself. Cutscenes always bore me in these games, so I immediately felt like it was wasting my time and wanted to skip it. I then got to walk around town, and immediately felt intimidated because I'd have to memorize the town's level design. Fortunately, the town isn't very big. All the buildings are in one convenient spot in one room of the game, unlike other games. The town just consists of a few horizontal rows of houses. So something so repetitive, naturally I took a little bit to fully memorize the exact building locations. They shouldn't call it the flower shop if you can't buy flowers. You can buy flower seeds though. Not that it matters right away. The librarian who looks just like Mary from the previous game is in this game. And naturally I was impressed right away. But no, I can't marry her. When you go into the library, you can't give her a gift. There should be an inn building to at least try to explain where everyone lives, because the mayor is the only one who has a house of his own. There aren't any civilian houses wasting your time. So it's all either shops, a clinic where the doctor lies that you're fine even though you don't have your stamina at max, so how did they screw that up? It makes it look like the clinic doesn't do anything. And there's a church that serves no purpose whatsoever most of the year. Yeah, that makes sense. What kind of a name is Chocola? There's a girl called that in this game. It's so patronizingly unrealistic that she never says she's ashamed of her name and no one makes fun of it. Why do her parents do that to her? We'll never know because the NPCs in this game have no personality for the most part and barely get any development. And then there's the town square north of the town, which has a billboard that tells you about the mole whacking minigame I never played on the TV. When I unlocked it by just tilling the soil of my farm, my game crashed. No kidding. What a great first impression. The minigame's total ass anyways because you don't actually see the specific mole hole that you're highlighting. So you just blindly move the circle pad around and mash A, hoping you don't press A over the frogs. How did they manage to screw this up? And the town square's billboard is just full of notes telling you things you've always known. I've started to hate the spring music because it sounds too goofy. It worked for the very beginning of the game when you were just getting started, not when you're an experienced farmer. I wish this game had the night music, a magical melody with a hooting owl. It'd be nice to get a daily break from the music that constantly restarts when at night. I like that even this old game bothers to give your character idle animations, but that was also in the previous game. I love that if you press select in the tool menu and turn memo on, it has the day of the week and time and what tool you have equipped, always displayed in the screen. I hate that it eats up screen space. It's great that there is a run button. It'd be better to have a walk button instead. You'll have no reason not to be running. When you press A in front of your cat, you pick it up regardless of what tool you have equipped. Same always went for trying to ride a horse. I wish that was the case for the harvest-ready crops and berries. The Q&A tells you that cats give you items and dogs herd. And if it has no affection meter, then it's not like I need to own it longer for it to have better chance of giving me stuff. When I first played the game, I tried to till the land directly in front of my house and was confused and shocked that nothing happened. I had to go down a screen and only then could I get to Tillable Land. Which is easily the most inconvenient place in Tillable Land I've ever seen. The music still restarts whenever I change screens. I love that the flower shop is open even at 6 AM. But it was so unintuitive that it took a while to find this out and take advantage of it anyways. I hate that there's an option to buy 0 seeds every time you try to buy seeds, and it's the default option. I don't know why the game can't just always have the amount of money it had be visible when you're at a store. I'm grateful that she only lets me buy as many seeds or whatever she actually has, so I don't have to keep count of what I have back home. I know I have 99 when she runs out of stock of something. It's realistic. I wish the lady at the flower shop with the relatable pose with her hands on her chin told you how long it took to grow every crop, not to mention how much it's worth. She'd rather tell you that you have to water your crops daily every time you buy seeds. It's pretty ridiculous with her dialogue for asparagus seeds. She says they harvest in 9 days if you water them daily, and then says that of course you have to water them daily. It's not like the crops are gonna wilt if you take a few days to water them. I like the soundtrack for this game more. Even the menu music is good. But it being good is distracting because it tempts me to just sit there on it and listen. Menus shouldn't have their own themes. What Harvest Moon game does that? That blonde Chicola makes it harder to get into the animal shop quickly. I immediately loved the Mountain Forest music. It was surprisingly epic and adventurous. Time doesn't fly by nearly as fast in this game. When you're experienced with Harvest Moon 1 and have the sprinkler, you actually prefer the faster time, keeping the fast pacing up because days fly by, which is much better for making you feel like you're progressing than this game's time. Considering the stamina system, you always feel like you have time to do everything you want to do in the day, as long as you don't plant too many seeds for you to handle. There's no shipping bin right in front of the house, which means you have to take a few extra seconds going inside of your barn to ship something you got from the woods. Or you could take the risk of trusting your horse. There's only 3 things to forage, which is actually good because you don't have a bag in this game. For some asinine reason. The mountain stumps respawn after a screen transition. If you move at all when cutting a stump, the game loses track of how many times you've hit it. And I hate that you can't simply jump down ledges on the mountain to quickly get to the bottom. You need a guide to know the shortcut to the farm. How are you supposed to know you can walk through a tree? Thank goodness that's in the game. It was a very convenient way of getting max lumber over a few days, because they're right next to the hot spring. I only knew that you could heal a bunch of stamina by hopping into it repeatedly from looking it up online. If you don't have a tool in one of the slots, it gets the empty hands feature if it's empty. So it's not like it'll be faster getting to your other tools with less tools in there. It's weird that with some things you put in the toolbox, they always go on the second page of it. Why can't we just put the tool wherever we want? It takes extra time looking for the second page. All the 8-bit games don't show you the face of the one buying what you ship, because there's no character portraits. Some invisible guy suddenly teleports to your bin and throws his voice so loudly that you can hear it from anywhere on your farm. Somehow they thought not letting you make money off anything you ship after 5 PM was a remotely acceptable idea. Luckily, this game lets you get away with staying up until almost midnight with no consequences. You can't stay up past midnight though. You'll be forced to go to bed automatically, when the previous game let you stay up until 6. What's confusing is that you can only go to bed by pressing A in front of the diary. It was something weird about the previous game too. I love that there's such a quick transition to the next day after you go to bed. That's something great about the older games. I usually enjoy playing this game. It's hard to stop playing it. Of course I'll sound negative when fully describing it, because what's good about it is the same thing that's good about most Harvest Moon games. There are a lot of these games, so I can afford to be picky. You only know the hour of the day and not how many minutes you have. So you never know how close you are to the next hour. This means the difference between getting to ship stuff before 5 and not bothering because you think you won't make it to the bin in time. I didn't think to complain earlier because it's a bunch of old games, but there's still some room to the left of the hour of the day on the memo. this 8-bit game as a horse race? It's such a simple concept, I don't know why it wasn't in the previous GBC game. It was obvious the game was rushed out and that's why it's so bare. That's why I had to re-water crops in the rain after harvesting. I was so glad they fixed that glitch for this game. If you use tools too many times in the rain, and the worst part is they don't even tell you how many times you're allowed to do it, then the next day, your character will wake up with a cold, and decide to spend the whole day in bed. What the fuck? That is the stupidest gimmick there's ever been in a Harvest Moon game. I didn't think anything could top the scrappy mechanics of Story of Seasons, but somehow they managed. You have to look up a guide, which you're not going to think to do, to find out that going to the clinic after working in the rain will cause you to rest there for the night and not have to deal with this. You're better off having the memo on rainy days, so you don't miss out on your opportunity to go to the clinic. On my first playthrough, because the game never told me about the clinic's function, I didn't think I could do any work in the rain after that. The only thing the game's Q&A warns you about not doing is sowing seeds. Don't blame us if you get a cold. I will blame you because you programmed it into the game. Well, maybe the person who wrote this text didn't, but it said us, which kind of implied everyone responsible for this game. You'd think the Q&A would tell you about the clinic thing. And the way I upgraded my hoe was that I used it until it suddenly broke. And I was like, that's unnecessary. So I had to get it repaired in the tool shop and wait 3 days for it. I realized that it was just an alienating precursor to the way the blacksmith works, without forcing you to get the ore yourself. It's pretty annoying though that every shop is closed on Sunday. The idea of every shop in the game being closed on the weekend was an idea I thought about as a kid when I was questioning the unrealistic closed days of the shops. And even Kid Me discarded it because I knew that would lead to this very problem. It's creepy that if you choose the talk option, the priestess just says your name and that's it. The grass looks so ugly when it's ready to be harvested because it's obvious that each tile of grass is separate from the others. You have to stand so close to the square you want to cut for the game to actually cut it. You'll almost be standing on it. Otherwise, you'll swing your sickle and waste time and stamina. I love that you don't have to charge up the super tools. I hate that when you use the super sickle or axe, your character's eyes bulge out overly cartoonishly. It's gruesome and distracting. You get it from Will after he falls down a cliff. The game is nice enough to teleport you to the clinic after someone tells you to help Will. And then you have to get the idea to talk to Will the day later in his shop. He'll take your sickle and give you the super sickle 3 days later. Or you can get it early as a birthday gift. But you only get a birthday gift from the one person with the highest affection. Which is lame compared to everyone that liked you in a later game, which was common sense. Thankfully, the sprinkler's back. It works the same as before, unfortunately. It should have been Child's Play to extend to the watering range. You can get the fishing rod really early from the tool shop for 2000 G, which feels like highway robbery considering that when I first used it, because I hadn't fished before in the previous GBC game at that point, I waited for a while and got no bite. At least I thought I had no bite because I didn't see an exclamation mark appear over my character's head. So I had to look it up. To pull a fish up, you need to wait until you see the end of your pull twitch. So you get a bite every time the fishing rod dips, every second. So the rod works way better in this game. You can actually hoard fish. That's not actually good because it means you might waste a lot more time with the game just to try to get 100% completion with it, when it doesn't actually care. There are immersively small 18 different kinds of fish, and you can hoard 99 of each kind in the fishing pond. That's how they get longevity. Fishing is awesome once you figure out how it works. And this time you can be right next to the bin when fishing. But it's more fun to do farming because that's what you're playing a farming game for. And with farming you get to actually move around instead of just sitting in the same spot. This is the best fishing system in all of Harvest Moon. The way this is handled, where it rewards timing, is actually pretty exciting and rewarding. All it really needs to be better is a bag or basket. I hate having to constantly go back to the bin. As usual, it's random which fish you catch, and there seems to be only 2 fishing spots. So it's only a matter of time before you get them all if you're trying. All of the fish are blue. It feels even more pointless that there's so many different names of fish. And the fact that you can't cook means you don't have to spend a billion years cooking them. It's so much more streamlined. I wish I could just pick up and move the shipping bins. It sucks that the game insists on asking you for confirmation on some things you'd always want to say yes to. Like, take out this fish? It wastes your time. You need to put fish in the pond to ship them the next day if you're fishing past 5 PM. It's so convenient for an 8-bit game that you wouldn't expect that at first. Usually you just expect the sign to say where you are. So why would you check the sign in front of the pond and find out what it's actually for? Sadly, you're only allowed to buy animals when you have enough grass planted and fodder. Unlike in the previous game, they ramped that up to 11 to the point of making it look like the clerk refusing to sell you animals has serious problems. Seriously, I couldn't count all the times I cursed that green-haired weirdo out and called him out on how fucking weird he was for not selling me a goddamn animal already. They shouldn't force a pasture on you. It's a lot more satisfying when you think to do it yourself to get free fodder. Too bad it's impossible to get rid of a square of grass. It wouldn't be so bad if he at least told me exactly how much grass I had to have, so I wouldn't constantly have my time wasted by failing to buy something. I ended up buying a chicken after 100 fodder. Chickens' hitboxes are a bit too big, and you can only get a more profitable golden chicken by trading again. So again, fuck that game design. But at least there are golden chickens in the game. I love that after the end of the season, the crops don't wilt and force me to get rid of their dried out weed forms. That's the case for a lot of the older games, but it's just so common sense that they don't force you to do this that it's easy to forget to mention it. Like the fact that you don't have to wait a couple seconds before you can move again after giving someone a gift. Because you shouldn't have to compliment the game on doing what it's supposed to do. Speaking of that, I love that when you have a seed and buy more of the same kind, you end up with, say, 1 bag of a large amount of seeds, rather than ending up with 2 bags of the same seed variety wasting space. It's like complimenting the game for being programmed correctly. But it's hard to figure out what's complimenting the game what's supposed to do. At a certain point, I barely compliment the games at all if I never complimented on that. I think the tomatoes look distractingly bad. If you ask the carpenter to go to your house, he'll force it to be sunny when he shows up, which cancels out the blizzard or typhoon. You can actually get the 20 melons event twice. A guy told me that he pays you more for the melons than you normally get. Apparently, if you ship too many of the melons, it won't actually count it. He insisted that if I ship non-melons, it'll just cause problems. If you don't put enough melons in, his text annoyingly has him say that he can understand because it was a tall order, when my farm clearly had more melons that I could have put in the bin. Couldn't he have harvested that last melon himself? Ken should have said to you at the start that he'll pay you more for the melons than you would get from the buyer. I like the idea of this though. And melons is the most profitable crop anyways, so it's very convenient that he asks for them. Well, at least you can only have up to 4 cows and sheep. That's a compliment because friends in Mineral Town letting you have 16 animals in your barn really dragged out the days in comparison. I love that every cow mine looks unique. And I wish every Harvest Moon game did this. Not that this makes the ranching fun. Obviously, you don't have the max animal infection exploit in this game. They don't get a ridiculous infection boost from medicine. Melons being multi-harvest is also confusing. Like how eggplants are single harvest on the Game Boy Color. You get the horse as a mare for free. And it is unique that the horse is white. But it looks weird when it's facing south. It honestly looks like it's got a skull mask like a demonic horse. The super hammer is gone after you expand your house. You'll get it long after you've already used the hammer for everything you would ever use it for. Why did I have to talk to the lumberjack Ken in order to get the super hammer? I never would have thought to do that. The treasure map is sadly part of a really poorly designed quest that's impossible to complete because it requires trading to get the other half of it. It's so insulting, it could have very easily not been split in half. The billboard spoiled for me that the map was a slide puzzle. I sucked at those in other games and never really gave them a chance. You can't just dig where the miracle gloves are supposed to be. You have to be told where it is first, which is dumb. And the dicks who lazily ported this game to the virtual console were too lazy to just put the miracle gloves in your toolbox by default, which would show actual consideration for people. If they thought the miracle gloves were a great idea, why the hell didn't they just let you buy it at a store? So you're really better off just game sharking into your inventory. What is the point of the franchise having two makers if cheese and butter are both worth the same, which has been the case since the beginning? It would be a newbie's trap if one was more profitable than the other because you wouldn't know which to make. You might as well save Buttermaker for the last thing you buy. I've been befriending the villagers as well. Most of the time, the only way to raise affection with people is to talk to them. But that's much more convenient than having to look up what gifts they like the most. Mary asked me to go to the mountain with her, not specifying the time, and we buried a time capsule, and I got a bunch of messages I was able to choose. Of course, I chose I Love Mary, and 3 years from now she'll open it up because apparently she was planning on that. I hope she has a good response. I'm glad I can watch the full moon with her. It's like they knew. And I like that she said, "Thank you very much," when I gave her a berry in town on Sunday. It's mean that nobody's outside when it rains. Because you can only give gifts to people when they occasionally happen to be outside. I read all the Q&A. Enough to learn that you apparently need to build a hothouse in order to grow flowers and herbs. Which is weird because I don't remember needing to build one to grow them in Harvest Moon 64. It also told me that I need to harvest them with the scissors out of nowhere. That's at least an interesting change of pace. And I guess it's realistic and immersive. You can only have 4 tools at once, so whenever you need to harvest flowers or herbs, you always have to go all the way back to your house to get the scissors. But using the scissors costs stamina, of course. And that's when this harvesting method becomes an actual problem. I hate that you have to buy flower pots. You'd think they just come with a hothouse. I do love that the greenhouse exists though. So where was this in Friends of Mineral Town? And the crops in the greenhouse are safe from blizzards and typhoons. I love that you can grow herbs. There's an option in the Carpenters for building a sheep pen. Why do I need to build a separate barn for sheep? Because there's a sheep exclusive pen, you'll actually feel like having sheep. Normally sheep are in Newbie's trap because they only produce wool once a week. It would be better if you could just have an option to have a second cow pen though. Considering that sheep will bully sheep that look different from them in real life. It is realistic actually. I tried to plant turnips in the sheep pasture and was pissed when the seeds just vanished. Why on earth do they put a shipping bin in the pastures then, if it's impossible to plant crops there? You're not gonna feel like going out to the pastures to put wool in there. Did 2 people design the pastures and they didn't communicate? Wasn't it common sense for them to program the seeds to stay in your inventory? And it's confusing that there's both a scissors item and clippers, because I instinctively feel like the scissors should function as clippers too. Speaking of tool redundancies, I always wondered why on earth is there a separate tool for calling out every different species of animal to graze? I never use those tools anyways. So why'd they include 3 different options for feeding animals? I bought all the medicines for animals in feed and discovered that 1. You actually aren't given the option at all to buy a miracle potion if you have 4 cows or sheep. Why is there sheep medicine and cow medicine? Wasn't it quicker to just program one type of medicine? At that point, where's the chicken medicine? If chickens just don't get sick, when apparently they do in the 64 game, that's weirdly nice. They already can't get their affection up, which is good for the pacing in the long run if you actually know that. It's interesting that the cow, chicken, and sheep feed end up staying in your barn and coop as an emergency food supply within it rather than adding to the fodder supply. I had to wait until tomorrow to buy the sheep feed. Why is the sheep medicine more expensive? Eventually the player does get to buy the yarn maker, which left me baffled that it took so long for it to be sold. There's even a knitwear maker. I really hate that the Q&A lies to you that animals don't need to be fed during typhoon or blizzard. The 8-bit games don't have animal festivals that increase the price of your animals or their products. I'm in the spring of the second year, and the horse just got the ability to ship things. I feel cheated having to buy the saddlebags. I bet I didn't have to buy them in 64. The horse moves around even more in this game, so it's even more likely that you'll destroy the item you're holding now. Sometimes you end up stuck in something when you dismount. Quality control? What's that? Normally you can harvest a max of 9 crop squares in a donut pattern in a day. The horse brings that up to a measly 10. I'd love to be able to build another greenhouse. There's plenty of room for that on your farm. Instead, the bridge is practically pointless. Most of the land down there goes to waste. How are you supposed to know that you can talk to the mayor twice in the New Year festival to get 1000 G? The festival doesn't even happen until the second year, as usual. When the day of the horse race comes, you're asked if you want to join by nobody inside your own house, with no explanation. And if you say yes, another way it's streamlined is that you instantly teleport to the horse race game. That's weird but compliment worthy. Too bad the minigame sucks. Button mashing A and B? Really? Why is everyone ahead of me? I'm good at Mario Party games. It's easy to accidentally hit yes when mashing A to get through the text in the morning. Why is it called Daisy Stakes anyways? The internet suggests using different fingers to win the horse race. Winning the Spring Horse Festival gives you 20,000 G, which is more than enough to make up for the profit you were cheated out of from time skipping ahead to 6 PM after the race. So I got the ability to spend over 3,000 G on the ability to practice the horse race. Sadly, you need to waste the whole day with the horse race at least once to be able to buy this from the tool shop to practice it. You'd never think to talk to someone twice at a festival to get extra dialogue. You can catch bugs with a net. I like the net because it reminds me of A Link to the Past. But I don't see the point to it because you can't ship the insects. They just disappear. How are you supposed to know to catch every type of insect? And there are only bugs in the summer and spring. They try to incentivize it by having your character have an insect photo album along with a fish photo album. The so-called library consists of no educational books, and instead it's just a collection of your photo albums and lets you trade with other copies of the game you don't have. At least the photo album is giving this game a unique quest to accomplish if you feel like it, separate from the main story of it. I'll never be able to get every photo. It's so distractingly weird how the photos always contain both the girl and guy protagonists. As if the girl is a canon character who just follows you around like a stalkerish ghost and somehow appears in all your photos. And no one questions it. Was there seriously not room in the cartridge to have separate photos depending on your gender? Well, it is confusing that the game doesn't tell you that you're getting a photo taken when it happens. It is faster! I don't like that when you're in the album, you can't simply hold right immediately to get to the next photo. Instead, you have to press A to scroll through the text describing it after you get it to appear every single time. At least the fact that completing the albums is its own reward doesn't make you obligated to do it if you wouldn't want to do it. Mary gave me a picture of a flower for my birthday. I hate how there's more than 8 flowers in the plant album when it says 08. I have 2 flowers that aren't given a number out of 8. By the time I remembered it was the Harvest Festival, it was already too late. I had already shipped all my cow's products. You need to give Rosie some milk or cheese. But apparently she's not satisfied with anything else, and yet she'll still take them from you. It's so stupid that even though it's called a harvest festival, it's not about giving your crop to her. That was just unfair. I appreciate the idea of having to give her cheese, though. So here's how the 25th of Winter Festival works. When you talk to the doctor, he glitches out and doesn't give you any dialogue. Anyways, if you go to the church and choose to pray for anything but wealth, so that shouldn't have been an option, you get that wish granted. Unfortunately, because bullshit, it'll be 6 PM after that point. I cut all the stumps in the southern field, and I still don't have the super axe. I had to look up how to get the super tools I don't have. Apparently, if you keep talking to Daisy of the seed shop, she gives you a super axe she had no excuse for not giving to you right away. What was so hard about having your tools upgrade themselves automatically like last time? I wish the secret garden was the way of the harvest sprites. Who else would suspiciously have a secret garden on my property that only has a new flower show up when you get a power berry? That's pretty magical to me. I'm grateful for every event I get because it spices up the monotony. And it's not like the events feel dragged out, so they don't bore me immediately. I'm even looking forward to the pointless going deaf event for year 3, where you have to go to the clinic for it, or you end up stuck in bed all day the next day. Because God forbid you're smart enough to realize that it doesn't really matter if you can't hear the music in this game. At some point I was disappointed that the beautiful Rosie not only gets married, but actually gets replaced by her sister forever at that point. I remember going into her shop and seeing Chicola and being like, what did you do to your hair? The fact that she's dating Chet comes out of nowhere. Sure, this is clearly Chicola, but this is the same game where Ken has a darker skinned character portrait behind the desk, and then his sprite is a white guy with green clothes and black hair. I could never get Rosie to her last dialogue box in the first playthrough before suddenly the game robs me of her. But at least Chicola only says 3 things, because it's faster. I had an event where the carpenter was panicking over seeing a ghost in the fountain. I got cheated out of seeing how an event ended, because it turned 6 PM right before I could go talk to Ken again. There was no reason Ken couldn't have given me the full details on what he saw earlier in the town square, instead of me needing to talk to Minister Kane first. But that sounds like a guy's name, so I didn't know what the mayor was talking about. Events should not end at the end of the day. I assumed I'd get to meet this ghost, because this is a franchise with elves in it. I'm guessing the so-called twist is that it's not really a ghost. I can never get the girl who wants to be a dancer or the old man to say anything new. So what's the point of letting you give gifts to them? If you befriended all the villagers, on your birthday the mayor will come to your house and give you a measly 1000 G instead of a photo, and Mary doesn't show up. What the hell were they thinking? That's horrible game design. It's completely unrealistic that she decided not to give me a gift. I can't give weeds to villagers. I finally got the mayor to stop showing up and keep me from getting Mary's birthday gift. I had to let 8 cows and sheep die and answer fine. Why do they make oversleeping take priority over getting a birthday gift? You can buy 999 flower pots when you can only play 16 of them. So to feel like you've fully completed the game, you have to spend less than 200,000 G. Boy, the game certainly does know to drag out the ending cutscene. I was so bored seeing my character automatically plant 1 plot of asparagus and take care of 1 cow at a snail's pace. I already see these things constantly, so this is repetitive and redundant. I don't need to be reminded of this. It's not really accurate anyways, because it only shows 1 cow. Not that I want to see him take care of all of them. Still, they could be right beside it. Why did the automatic character never run? It was cringeworthy seeing the cow be fed at such a slow pace. And I guess I gotta put the credits with the credits music somewhere. But it was still annoying having to ignore the game while the credits were there for a while. My character's birthday is spring 1st. That's also the day the 4th year celebration begins. That could have just consisted of the mayor showing up at your door to congratulate you and your picture being taken, and that's it. My point is, I'm not being given a birthday gift. I cannot believe they never anticipated any players being lazy and picking Spring 1st as their birthday. What a developer oversight! In fact, it's 6 PM all of a sudden. For the most part, it's a great game for keeping things simple and relatively fast-paced with clear financial goals right from the start. But it suffers from a couple of major problems. I think it's a lamer version of the previous Game Boy Color game. You can't marry anyone. Though I only missed that by late game, because I like getting to spend 100% of my short day doing something profitable. Especially in a game with no bag where you can't stay up past midnight. But the horse is the most common major problem with this game. The horse is always moving in a random direction and barely ever stays still. You're constantly mounting by accident even from a square away, and that can actually cause you to get stuck in things like your crops. At least the dumb horse makes harvesting an engaging challenge. It means you're not really bored and in pain from holding the run button all day long. You can't use tools outside in the rain or you'll get sick and lose a day if you don't know to rest at the clinic. The other major problem is that you're not allowed to buy chickens and cows until you have enough grass planted, and you're not told exactly how much you'll need. And you're also not told that it doesn't actually count the grass seeds until the grass is harvestable. So we end up taking it till fall to buy cows. And you'll be spending money on nothing but grass seeds until then, which feels wrong for Harvest Moon. Because the appeal of Harvest Moon is buying things permanently. Some real big problems are that I really hate how the cows and sheep are constantly moving and don't register that you're using tools in them unless they're stationary. Taking care of cows and sheep is annoying because you need to be way too close to them in order for the game to register that you're brushing them. So constantly, you'll end up using the brush twice because the cows move around way too much, especially if they think you pushed them. At least you aren't accidentally making them leave the barn. On the bright side, I love fishing in this game. It's so fast-paced. Play Harvest Moon 1 GBC instead. This game has 34 downgrades from that much faster-paced game where you got to see the days fly by. It's hard to motivate myself to play this game when it seems like a slug by comparison. The only purpose that days going by slower serves is obligating you to spend more time slowly foraging and fishing all day. Foraging is inferior because it's outside with further apart berries in a place without a shipping bin. And obviously there's not nearly as many areas for foraging as in 64. I feel like it's way better than Harvest Moon 64 though. I may hate not being able to marry someone, but at least there is a way to completely guarantee avoiding the sick in bed problem.